Here.
Glenn Carlson,
Here.
Larry Derrigan, Magdalene Dale,
Here.
Esme Martinson,
Here.
We have a quorum. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a confirmation of our meeting posting, Linda.
yes, I can confirm that tonight's meeting has been posted at all designated locations.
Thank you. We need an approval of our agenda.
I'll move we approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Glenn, a second by Magdalene. I didn't catch who it was.
Is it myself or Debbie? One or the other. Deb.
Debbie. We have a second by Debbie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 2.1, first item on our agenda, consider draft reentry school plan 2020-2021.
Thank you for the board members and for community members and staff members who are here tonight. It's been, we're in our third week of committee meetings for the fall reentry school opening plan. What we're providing the board tonight is a draft of the plan, meaning that there are certain aspects of the plan that is, well, all aspects of the plan is fluid. So the discussion tonight from the committee work and from the presentation that was sent to you, that's all up for discussion tonight. It's a framework that the committee has been putting together for the last 2 weeks. Third week. Also within the board docs, our board agenda for board docs, we placed in the executive content of the agenda. We placed in there notes from all the committees work for the last 2+ weeks that we wanted the board members to see what's been going on, what's been discussed, and the rationales from those discussions. And the committees we've had a recorder for every meeting, and they've just taken the same agenda notes, and then at the next meeting they would just continue on the path of the same approach. So those notes that you have in your executive area are a culmination of all the committee work that's been going on in the last 2.5 weeks. The third part of that, we also attached your notes from the board that were coming back to us from from the discussion you're having regarding the plan. And so we attached them for you also tonight to get a view of what board members are thinking in response to what's been going on. Tonight, what we'd like to do, we have the teacher leaders of the committees. We have administration here tonight. We'd like to go through the plan with you. And this is a great opportunity for discussion. And we would love to hear from the board tonight on what your thoughts are in terms of the planning and in terms of maybe what we're not hearing in the community or from the constituents that we need to hear also. It's not an action item tonight. It's a draft update for the board. And then later tonight, we can determine the next meeting time, which is next Monday, to see if we could have things ready for Monday. If not Monday, then of course, shortly after that at some point. And that's what we're looking to do tonight. Do you have any questions before we move on from the board? All right. So Linda is going to attach the plan for everybody to see. The reentry plan.
Can you see it? I shared my screen.
There we go. Yep. So what we'd like to do first is we're going to get right into instruction. That really is the main focus of the fall. Parents want to know. Linda, you can move it up one screen if you want to move to the first slide. Parents, community members, board, all of us, we really want to focus in on instruction. You know, we want to know what we're hearing from other school districts and throughout the state. What are we looking to do in Bayfield in terms of instruction? So tonight what we have is we have the instruction committee members, not all of them I'm presuming, but we do have Mr. Erickson here, who's the teacher leader, who will begin the discussion on how they came about stage 1, 2, and 3, and the rationales for those stages. And at that point, Rick, if we could go through each stage, and then after you're done with stage 1, if we could have comments at that point or discussion, just so we can get all interest in the framework tonight. Rick, are you available?
Sure, you ready?
Yeah, let's the board's ready. I'm ready. We're ready.
Okay. So I'm gonna preface the stage 1 with a couple of quick comments, and also I'll do my best. This is a different format than what we had used, so I'm gonna do my best to follow the format that you're seeing in front of you. But leading up to this, what we were instructed to do, and I think that we felt real good about this in this direction, was that we were told that the task of the instruction committee was to focus on what are we talking about with instruction when if we come back to school. And so it wasn't a question of making the decision about whether or not we're going to come back, but we ultimately recognize that that's going to happen. And so when we come back, what would instruction look like, and what would the schedule look like? So our first task was to help set the tone for all of the other committees based on the information that we had available to us from DPI and other organizations, CDC, school board associations, administrators associations. What did we think was the best way to come back into the setting? And so we decided that the best thing to do was to look at a staged approach. We recognize that as new information comes out, and we're all on the same page. We understand the situation you're in regarding making decisions under these circumstances, and new information is coming out daily, and it's very likely these things are going to change between now and September. So what we've come up with is what we believe right now is our best way to re-enter. And so we've done that in a staged approach. And so what we have for stage 1 is that it's based on the concept that we believe in the science behind what CDC is saying and what the county is saying, in that the best way to address the virus situation right now is social distancing. And so based on that concept that social distancing is very important, we recognize that reducing the number of people in the building at one time needed to be a focal point. So stage 1 was based on that concept, and stage 1, we looked at a lot of different varieties of what this might look like. Ultimately, the stage that we decided to recommend was that we would do a 2-day rotation. We would bring kids back in, half of the students in one group and half of the students in a second group. One group would come in for face-to-face instruction Monday and Tuesday. They would be provided with enough information and support to do virtual instruction for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The second group, Group B, whatever you choose to call it, they would come in on Wednesday and Thursday, and they would be provided with enough information and support to be able to do virtual instruction on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. So stage 1 was the idea of a 2-day face-to-face, 3-day virtual approach, so that ultimately we still have the kids receiving instruction or materials for 5 days. So it's a full week of instruction, but 2 of those days would be face-to-face, 3 of them would be virtual. There also was a recommendation The exception to that was that the kindergarten would be split into two groups, also the A and B group, but rather than coming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they would come Monday through Thursday. There'd be a group that would come AM, and then there would be a group that would come PM Monday through Thursday. So rather than a 2-day split, they would be a half-day split. So they would be coming 4 days, but for half days. And again, that was based on conversations with community members, other outside organizations, and that was the recommendation that we ended up with. So if you want to stop with stage 1 before we move on, Jeff, I think that's what I heard you say. The other thing, just a quick note before, if that's the way you want to do it. The other note that doesn't fit into the stages is that, so we were told that what we would like to be able to do in the district is to be able to provide options for families and students. And those options would include face-to-face instruction, a full virtual option, and a blended option. And so what we've presented to you in stage 1 is the blended option. It doesn't have a full face-to-face version. It has a partial face-to-face version. And then the full virtual option, another recommendation from the committee, was to contract with a third-party company whose specialty is to provide full virtual for the families who choose full virtual instruction. And the rationale there is, there's several, but primarily the idea that staff will be already doing face-to-face instruction for 4 days and providing virtual instruction for those students who aren't in school. For families who choose full virtual, it would be very difficult for a staff member to create a full virtual program along with those other expectations. And so the idea was to contract with a third party consistently with what other school districts are doing. So that's the stage 1 component. Did you want to stop there and wait for comments, Jeff? Or questions?
Yes, that would be great. And I just want to say that we don't have a slide up that what Rick just illustrated, which is the virtual, the physical in-person option, the blended physical and virtual option. And then the third one is complete virtual. If a parent wants the student out, their child out for the whole time, that would be the virtual. So those are the 3 stages. Any comments so far from board members on this stage 1?
Yes, I have a couple. Rick, when you guys are going through this for the kindergarten part now, I see the recommendation was, or the plan is to have AM, PM kindergarten. What about the cross potential contamination of the children for that? Will there be cleaning involved in between that? Because if so, doesn't that take a while to do? And to bring one group in and then another group, do you think that's good to do it that way?
That's a great question. I mean, we're all grappling with the same questions, and so so I know that you're aware that there are several committees going, and obviously there's overlap between those committees. And absolutely, yes, that question came up. I mean, we've addressed a lot of different options, and so as a committee, what we decided, there's so many different ways to look at things. We really thought that our best approach was to take things from the perspective of instructionally, based on what we believe is best instructionally for kids, academically, mentally, socially, and what would we recommend? And then those recommendations then were then presented to transportation committees and wellness committees to look at that. And that definitely is a question about, yes, there would be cleaning in between. Would it be sufficient? I don't know that I have the answer to that question. And so that's why, and I'm going to be totally, one thing I should have said right from the beginning, I'm going to say that I really appreciate this process, because I think having more voices at the table and more minds thinking about it is the direction we need to go. And those are the kinds of questions that maybe haven't definitively been answered yet. If there's somebody here from the wellness committee or from the facilities committee, they might be able to answer that question better than I can. Yes, so my answer is this. Yes, we have considered it. what we're recommending is what we believe is best for kids instructionally. And that might not be the same as what is best for kids with respect to health and wellness. And so at some point, all of those things need to come together. I'm sorry, that's not an answer, but that's where we are.
It just tells me that you guys are still in the working process of trying to figure this out a little bit more. But
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that, you know, I addressed it because that's what was on my mind, so.
I can't,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh,
I was just gonna say that same question came up about the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday split. There were some people who felt like we should come in Monday, Tuesday, have another group, have a day off Wednesday for cleaning, and then have a group come in Thursday, Friday. And so all of those things have been discussed, and the recommendations that you see in front of you are the result of those discussions. That discussion was a similar discussion that having a full cleaning day Wednesday might be a better option. The recommendation, again, instructionally, was that the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday split is more consistent with the Red Cliff ECC and the Bayfield Family Forum. And with the new cleaning supplies that we're hoping to bring in, that we would still do a thorough cleaning after Tuesday. And yes, there wouldn't be that full day in between, but we would certainly make an effort to do as thorough cleaning as possible. And so again, yes, those things have been considered, but these are just recommendations at the time, at this time.
Linda, is it possible you could put up the operations, go down a little bit for the operations, healthy environments slide to answer Cindy's question? So Cindy, real quickly, this is what the facilities committee has been working on in response to your question. And on there, we're looking at cleaning and disinfecting with the COVID CARES Act monies that the district is receiving. We're looking to hire 2 COVID assistants. What they're going to do is every minute of the hour, they're going to be walking through hallways and cleaning, disinfecting. We're going to be providing, I don't know if Dave Weber's on here. Dave, we're just going to be doing an overflow of cleaning throughout the day in classrooms and hallways, handrails, everything we can imagine. We're going to try to clean consistently throughout the day.
I want to say something just related to the last thing that Rick said about the split on being Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday. If I had a comment on that first slide of stage 1, that would really be my opinion, is like having that Wednesday, not just as a cleaning day and a day off, but also as a prep day for teachers, so that students are getting equitable education. So the Monday, Tuesday students are getting a teacher who's been able to prep or is fresh from the weekend. And the Thursday, Friday students are also getting a teacher who has had a chance to prep and is a little fresher. So I think there is more reasoning to do it a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, Friday split. So I just want to add that.
Thank you, Magdalene. Holly Weber, are you on tonight? Holly Weber? All right, Linda, can we go back to slide 1, back to stage 1? Thank you. I was going to ask Holly about the 3-day reference back in April, that we were told that it took 3 days for the, for the building to the facilities to basically clean itself due to the virus within 72 hours. I don't know if that still stands to what Magdalene is talking about. I wanted to see if Holly would comment on that.
Jeff, this is Debbie Knopf, and I'm wondering if when people talk, since there's extra people on tonight, if they could just identify, just say who they are, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board on stage 1? So far, what we have is Cindy is concerned about, the cleaning of the environment and how we're going to do that in terms of protecting kids safely, and kindergarten questions. And then Magdalene brought up the fact that if we could clean on Wednesdays, it would be more appropriate. It seems that there could be a break within the week, and that the A group would be, teachers would have that Wednesday to regroup and then start fresh on Thursday with a clean room. If we could clean the area on Wednesday.
I
Yeah.
have one more other question, Rick. On here, you said you would like, they would like to contract with an outside third party for the virtual, day. Do we have anyone in the school that would be able to do that? Or do you feel we should contract out? I know you said some other schools are doing that.
Yeah, so this is our thought with respect to that. There are schools who have been doing that for a while, not even as a response to COVID, but they've had that option always for kids. And so there are a couple of thoughts on that. One is that that teachers already, I'm going to speak from my own personal perspective, that as a teacher with many years of experience teaching, my experience is entirely face-to-face. And so the spring for me was a real difficult time to change that mode of instruction to a virtual mode of instruction. And that as much as it seemed to me that it should have been the same amount of work or maybe even easier, it actually for me was more work than what I'd done, because I already had stuff that I had to draw on. Whereas teaching virtually is a totally different environment. What's effective face-to-face is not necessarily effective virtually. And so that's a new world to me. And so going back in the fall, my goal, I mean, we all want kids to be there every day. I mean, I want to see my kids. That's why I went into teaching. That's where I feel I do my best job. And so I want to see kids face-to-face 5 days a week for full days. The reality is right now, I can't imagine that happening. And so that leaves me with the idea that I'm going to be doing blended instruction. And at best even, I mean, I hope that I'll be able to see the kids for a couple of days, but that means that I'm going to be dealing with half of the kids every day face-to-face and the other half of the kids every day virtually. And then that's already two things on the table, but then to create an entirely virtual program, that looks different to me than a blended program if I want to do it with integrity and do it well. Could I create something like that? Of course I could. Would it be good? No, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be as good as it could be. And there are companies that and I'm not typically a proponent of this, but under these circumstances, I think that's an option that's necessary if we're going to deliver education with integrity for all of our students. Secondarily, there are other school districts that are doing that. And so if we know that unfortunately we're in a situation right now where there are competitions between school districts. If we don't offer a full virtual program that's a quality program to students can open enroll to local districts who are doing that, and other local districts are doing that. And so we could have families who say, if you're not going to provide me with a good full virtual program, then I'm going to enroll in Washburn, or I'm going to enroll in Ashland, or I'm going to enroll in Drummond. And so we have to keep that on the table. I hate that that's a piece of the puzzle. It shouldn't be a piece of the puzzle, but as long as the state is not going to step up and give specific mandates, that's something that is real. And so it's a tough situation for me as a teacher. I strongly believe that the teachers who are trained to be teachers in the classroom should be educating our kids, but we are in very unusual times. And so I think that at this point, I think offering a third-party virtual program where that organization is taking care of educating that portion of students who choose that, I think that's the right way to go.
This is
Rick?
Magdalene.
Nope, go ahead.
I'd like to, okay. So I hear everything that you're saying, Rick, and I think like your perspective as a high school teacher is really important in that. And I can see, and I also want to say, not only will people open enroll at local districts, they'll also open enroll at districts in other parts of the state that are geared completely to virtual, because I've already seen ads coming up all over and people referencing different options to enroll, not just only at local districts. so I understand the concerns and I appreciate this as an option for the high school, possibly the middle school. For the elementary though, I am concerned. And I do, just as Rick spoke from his personal experience, I'm going to speak from my personal experience. My son will be entering first grade and and I do not know that I will be, somebody needs to mute. Sarah, Doro, can you mute?
Can I taste that?
Sarah, no, can you mute? Thanks. Okay. So my son is entering first grade and he does not need more screen time, and any all virtual option would be a lot of screen time. What he needs is a connection to his teacher, a connection to his classmates. And I don't know that even if we had this where we are going back for 2 days a week, depending on where COVID is at, that we'll feel comfortable sending him to school physically. But I am wondering if within this, either the virtual option that's by a third party is only offered to middle school, high school, and maybe it allows some of the teachers like gym, art, etc., to focus more on the elementary. I do have a plan that I think we'll get to later for a way that elementary teachers can focus their energy to accommodate both in classroom and virtual and allow for those families that are keeping their kids home. But I really hope that we can have an option that's also virtual learning with the district halftime and at home learning that is facilitated by family. Yeah.
I just want to kind of piggyback on what Magdalene's saying. I think that the elementary kids, to me, I just have a lot more concern about their need for in-person learning, and even maybe it's not safe right now, but they just need so much more social interaction, and they're it's such a tender age, and to do any sort of non-in-classroom learning is probably not going to be very effective for those elementary school kids. I mean, Nori's 3, so I don't even know, yet what the at-home teaching would look like, but I can imagine it's not very effective if you have a full-time job or if you lack the interest or if your kid does. And so those high energy kids who need to be setting those very basic just standards for learning later in life, I mean, I'm more concerned that they need to be in person. And I'm just wondering if we've considered allowing for that space in the school for maybe kindergarten through 5th grade by having maybe the middle school and high school students who are possibly, I'm not saying all of them, but if there are the majority of those age groups that are capable of learning mostly at home, can we use the school to basically spread out elementary school students so that instead of juggling kids the same half the class on Monday, Tuesday, and then a different half the class Wednesday, Thursday, or splitting it at all, can the kindergarten students come 4 days a week and just be split up into other classroom sizes? I understand that that might require more teaching staff, but I'm just wondering if that is anything we've considered, just using the space differently. It's a big school, and if not everyone has to be there at the same time, maybe the elementary school students could benefit from more in-person learning, and the older kids could do their best with the online. The downside is that online learning, like Rick was saying, is not necessarily the way that teaching staff do their best work, and that's fair. That's not necessarily what they signed up for. But the elementary school students, I mean, I just feel like it's really dangerous for them to miss all of that early learning. And the high school students, I mean, maybe this isn't true, but I feel like the high school students can stand on their own 2 feet a little bit better, and maybe they can make up some of that time after this is over. I just don't know that you get those age groups back, 5, 6, 7, and 8, where they're supposed to be learning so many new things every day and in person. I just don't think you're going to get anywhere with that. So if the school could be used for the in-person learning, and just instead of trying to bring K through 12 back and everybody back to some degree, can we say possibly that only some of the school age groups will come back at all? So I don't know if that was considered. I'm just kind of, it's kind of drastic, but everything's kind of drastic right now. So.
And I'll respond to that quickly before we move on. Magdalene and Esme, thank you for those comments. That's why we're having these discussions. We recognize, and we just need as many people having these discussions as possible, and things are going to change on a daily basis. We didn't, and Esme, specifically to your points, we did not consider anything that would have potentially required additional staff. We didn't think that was on the table. And we did not consider anything at this time where we would bring some grades back and not other grades. And again, recognize, we've had 2 meetings. So these are, what we really needed to do in our view was focus on the immediate. And Jeff was real clear, which we really appreciated. He was real clear that he wanted to have recommendations ready for your board meeting on Monday night. And so that gave us a pretty short time period. And we focused pretty strongly on this concept of how do we bring people back? And so there are probably infinite options out there that we have not investigated yet. And so what we brought to you at this point was what we have at this point. And so hopefully through further discussions, we'll be able to bring all of those considerations to the table and have more voices at the table. We'd love to have, we really don't have community members at the table. I'd like to have a board member present at those committee meetings. I think this is just one of those times where I know that it's sometimes cumbersome to have a lot of people on a committee. I think this is one of those times where we need every voice possible present.
And Rick, if I can add, and I want to also speak to your point about the third party option. I think that makes a lot of sense as an option. And it's an option for those who want it. So I don't think what you're proposing with the third party vendor is mutually exclusive with what Magdalene and Esme were suggesting. I think that we are fortunate, we're blessed to have a substantial rainy day fund in this district. And if there was ever a time to use the rainy day fund, this would be it. And so I think, it probably would be good to have a board member on some of these committees because, from my standpoint, I certainly would not rule out hiring additional staff, assuming that we can find them. On the third party issue, I'd also like to not ask teachers to change. I mean, everybody's under enough stress. Let's add to the stress that we're going to ask a teacher who's a square peg to now fit into a round hole. That will make them feel less than useless, I would think. And not, I don't think that's really good for anyone's mental health. And as Rick pointed out, there are a number of excellent third-party firms out there. We have the resources to do it. I wouldn't say that anybody has to do the third party or has to do virtual learning. I think that we should hopefully figure out a way that we can have the kids in school if their families want, 4 days a week. I can see the day off, but why I would add to the kind of the mix, and again, it's probably a staffing issue, but have the have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday available for somebody, that they don't have to choose between going Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday. They can do both. And if we had the staffing for that, that would be, I would think, an option that people might want to take. That's it.
So Glenn, I appreciate those comments. I agree. I think that the full virtual option is not, it's one option. And I'm pretty sure right now there are some families who would choose that option. And maybe that isn't the option for everybody, but I think it's one valid option to have out there. The thing that we just have to keep in mind on the bringing kids back right now, at least, is the social distancing thing. And then on another note, I assume I was the square peg you were talking about, but
No.
Okay.
I was, no.
That's okay. I feel like a square peg, so that's okay.
You're at least able to do Zoom, you know?
Sometimes.
But I guess, you know, do we have the resources, or could we get the resources? And I think with what Esme was talking about, you know, we do have a big building. And, you know, if we were to, you know, be creative in how we use it, I would just want there to be an option for parents or families that want to have their student in the school as much as possible.
And the other thing that I just want to bring up, and I think some other board members have maybe expressed concern over, is that some kids in our district don't necessarily have a safe place other than the school. So for me, the two major concerns are, you know, the COVID-19. But my second is the little kids or middle school and even high school students who don't have food at home, or whose parents aren't around, or their older sister's the one in charge. And so if they're 2 days at school and 2 days at home, 3 days at home plus a weekend, you know, are they even getting enough? Is it just an interruption? Is it consistent for them? Can their parent even remember to get them there Monday and Wednesday, or is it Tuesday and Thursday? Do they know? Are they driving them to school? I think that especially for young kids, I think they need consistency, and I think they need someone. It's not just math and English for little kids. You know, it's having a bond. It's having the adult in the room Monday through Friday. And if that's not possible Monday through Friday, just having more than 2 days a week, or for kindergartners, to me, splitting them up and having a morning class and an afternoon class. Some kids do better in the morning, some kids do better in the afternoon. I don't think that that's necessarily helpful to them at that stage. And then also, again, for parents, having my kid go to school for half of a day would do me zero good. 5, 4, 3, whatever days they're going for that wouldn't help me at all. I would rather just do half days. Would be a pain. It'd be a major pain. So that's where I come back to, you know, these kids need a safe place, the young kids, the elementary schools kids especially. And can we somehow get most of them, if they want to be there, back at the school, and use spaces like the gym, having the aides, maybe there's special ed aides that can even be stretched thinner, I know, but can we take aides, or can we bring on student teachers that aren't yet teaching but could at least take on part of the kindergarten class? You know, can we have someone piggyback off of a main teacher to be their support, so that there isn't a first grade teacher or a third or fourth grade teacher spreading themselves thin doing in person and online? I mean, it seems like to me too, if you're going to be doing online courses and your student is going to actually try to do that on their own, they're going to have questions. And so I would also be worried that the teacher is in the classroom teaching and getting phone calls and emails all day long for help. So either way, to me, if a teacher is trying to do both online and in person, that's 2 teachers. So whether or not, if we choose that option, it doesn't sound like we need more staff, because that person is doing 2 jobs. but I feel like it's super unrealistic. And I think that it is two people. You're just spreading someone thin. And if it's temporary, maybe it works, but I can't imagine taking that on. So I think getting creative, I would like to see us at least think about how many people are in the building and teaching staff, or how many people, aides and teaching staff, can we use differently, and try to redesign a classroom, use a gym, use a library space. Just get really creative. It's a big school, and I would feel better knowing my kids learning in a safe environment if there weren't as many kids there. But the best case scenario for young kids is to be learning from someone in person, and to be safe. And so I guess focusing on the elementary, those are kind of my questions. I know it leaves out, again, the high school students and the middle schoolers, but.
I think one of the important things, this is Debbie, to consider too is, all of those things are true. And yet what we know is that, we're in this pandemic, which is a very absurd, unusual situation. So, we don't even know when we can implement this process of stage 1, if it's going to be in August or September or October. And we don't really know, how long. We're looking at stage 1. Stage 1, might be pretty temporary, depending on what's happening with the COVID, and so it's going to stress families and kids for a little while because of the process of getting through the pandemic. And so, I so appreciate all of the ideas here that your group has put together, Rick, and you've done it in a very quick order. And like we've said, like Jeff said, it is fluid, but I think we're all in uncharted territory. And what I hear is people really trying to come up with the best ideas they can for staff and students in a temporary crisis situation. And that's how we have to continue to look at this. It's not going to be optimal, and it's not going to last forever, but it's going to get us through while we're getting through to a place where people can operate in the best scenarios for child development, for brain development, for socialization, for all those things that are important to kids from K through 12. But we have to take these very slow, somewhat painful steps. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I know we're moving to stage 2 soon. So I appreciate this work.
I'd like to pose a question to my other board members, just to make sure that I'm not crazy. I said earlier that, we should recognize that we do have the financial resources to spend on this. And Rick said, kind of their operating assumption from the beginning was that we were resource constrained. And I would just like to hear from my other board members as to, I'm not in favor of giving anyone a blank check, but I don't think that this is a time to pinch pennies either. So I'd be curious what the rest of the board thinks, because I think it might be a fundamental thing for the committees to go back and, if they knew that they had the ability to justify additional resources to accomplish all of these things that we've talked about just on the first slide. I'd like to know if I'm the only one that feels this way.
Jeff, you mentioned the CARES funds, but that's the first that I've heard of it. Can you share what the district has received in terms of CARES funds to respond to the COVID?
Yeah, I can give you a brief statement, and then Randy can give you the details. I believe it's between $140,000 and $160,000. That those monies can be used for the purposes of resources that the district needs in response to COVID. Very broad, for instance, bus monitors, the individuals we would hire to do work in the hallways to clean the hallways. In terms of staffing, teachers, that I don't know. Randy, do you have a response to that?
Yes, so it's $167,000 that we receive from the CARES Fund, but also because of how we ended up last school year, we have around $700,000 that we'll be carrying forward, that we'll be talking about tomorrow night on the Finance Committee. So we have funds available to help out. And then I've also heard that, you know, the legislators are also going to be bringing forward some additional funds for school districts.
Randy, can you tell me or tell the board roughly how much do we have in our rainy day funds?
Now we have over 500 or over 5 million. So like 5 million and some odd cents. So I think this is a perfect way to use those funds.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'd be curious what the other board members thought.
Well, one of my things I'm thinking about now is when the kids come back, are we going to be temping them? Are we going to be looking at fevers, you know, stuff? I think that we have one nurse. She's going to need some help.
Yep.
She'll need at least an assistant or someone to help her out there. So
I worry about finding people right now, though, with finding people that are qualified to help us right now.
There are a lot of unemployed people. Sadly.
Yeah, that's true.
I hear,
Also, oh, sorry, this is Magdalene. And sorry, Nicole, I'm there's also people, if they were assisting the professional, so if they're assisting Jackie and taking directions from her, they don't need to necessarily, they could, you know, have some beginning education, but they don't need to be a certified nurse, I would think.
If I may just step in real quick, Jackie, are you on call? Jackie?
Yep, I'm here.
Jackie, can you go over just briefly the bus temperature checks that we talked about in the facilities, and also how we want to handle temperature checks in the morning? Can you go over that?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'll start out with the bus. What we're proposed in facility committee, and I think this cross-referenced into transportation committee. I wasn't on that one, but a bus monitor for every bus, and they would be responsible for that temperature and symptom check before the student got onto the bus. They'd also be responsible for, you know, enforcing the rules of the distancing, the masks, the hand sanitation. So I think what Dave said is we were looking at an additional 6 staff for that. We already have 2 aides that monitor the buses already every day. For the island school, Meg has offered to be responsible for that. She was okay with being the driver and the symptom checker. So that would be the buses. The other thing that I'm looking into is a system. It's a symptom checking system. The one I have 2 meetings scheduled, one for tomorrow and one for Friday with representatives. It's Akinza is the name of one, and Frontline is the name of the other. I just found out what the tribe is using today. That's the Sarah Alert. So I was going to look into that too. And those are systems that my basic knowledge of it is that it's an app that you use. It runs you through temperature check and symptoms, and then it gives a green light or a red light, you know, if the student, and this is something that the families would be responsible for. So, you know, I have some concern with compliance on that.
Hey, Jackie?
Yep.
I just want to interrupt you real quickly. Linda, can you put up the transportation slide on operations? this is what Jackie's talking about, just so we can show the board that there's a reference to what Jackie's talking about.
Jackie, I have a question. So the bus monitor would be the one to enforce telling a 5-year-old at the bus stop that they can't get on the bus and come to school and they have to go back home?
That is a work in progress. That was definitely something from the wellness committee perspective that we were working on. How do we manage that? How do we know for sure that someone is in that house, to take them back? How do we work around, the shaming of that, or, the privacy violation that might bring up as well? So that's definitely a good question, Nicole, that, we don't have a complete answer on that right now. Any advice is welcome.
I have a question about that. Are kids allowed to just walk out of the house by themselves unattended, or could we require that someone walks them to the bus so that you just talk to that adult?
I'd say that's a long shot, Esme. There's hundreds of kids at the bus stops with
I just didn't know
nobody.
if it was the
And
requirement.
having supervision before COVID was an issue. And
Yeah.
I mean, we ask parents to do virtual education, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, so with knowing that, Nicole, I mean, how do we enforce at those bus stop stations, that they're wearing masks, that they're socially distancing, that.
Nicole, this is Glenn. I'd like to ask if we could return to the question that I asked a few minutes ago, which I really never got a single board member to respond to.
The question of resources.
Yes.
The question of funding isn't a question. We know the school has money, but we don't have a plan to enforce anything. So I don't know that opening up the doors to say we have all the money to do whatever we want, to give every student their own personal teacher to take home with them 5 days a week. I mean, we probably have the money to do that too, but I keep hearing social distancing. I feel like there's options. We have a lot of staff in our building, over 100 staff and less than 400 kids. That's less than 4 kids to 1 adult in that school. And we sort of talked about using other spaces. We can always bring in additional classroom space. There's a lot of options. I do feel like we need to go down the whole list and look at every area, because if food service is going to be held in all the classrooms, is that something that the kitchen staff can handle? We know that the transportation has already been brought up, that they want more bus monitors. We've talked about nursing. We've talked about IT on our end. I don't think money is the issue, Glenn, and I've never told the administration that we were giving the staff the impression that there were no resources available. I don't
I just want to make sure that.
have any other comment than that, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I wasn't asking for the board to say, oh, we're going to give them a blank check. I just was wondering if the rest of the board agreed that the assumption that the committees were making that there weren't additional resources might be unfounded.
Right. No, I agree that we need to use, any resources that are necessary to do this job adequately. So no, I'm in favor of don't feel like we need to be pinching pennies while we're trying to do something concerning the health of our staff and children.
Just a point of clarification, either on a presentation or if you look in the notes, not now, but when you have time, in the committee notes, you'll see in there that there was never the idea that we couldn't have more. There's a lot of recommendations for more in there at different levels. I don't think Rick was stating that we told them that they couldn't have additional. All the minutes will show that they want additional. So I think there's a miscommunication there.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in on that. I agree. Nobody told us we didn't have more resources. I'm just gonna say that the instruction committee, that's not something that we really discussed. That's a premise we were operating under, but we weren't ever told we didn't have resources.
Thanks, Rick.
Are we ready for option 2 or stage 2?
So we're not going over transportation or healthy environments or any of those other pages in the presentation. We're just skipping right to phase 1 and now we're going to phase 2.
No, we can. We certainly can. We certainly can go through them now if you'd like.
I was
just
thinking
add
that Rick had
one-
the stage 2 in education. Or not?
I can do it either way. Your call.
Yeah, let's go back.
All right, so as she's scrolling back, I also, again, want to make the point, and I think we all know this, none of these scenarios are good scenarios. We're operating in a situation that's very unusual, and we're trying to come up with the best options we have for kids, keeping in mind that safety and health is a #1 priority, while also trying to instruct. So I mean, yes, we have a big building, and yes, we have a big staff, and we could split kids up into corners of the building and keep them socially distanced. What this committee was talking about then also is how do we instruct under those circumstances, because we also need to teach. And so, which is why these discussions are so important, because there are so many things to consider. And I think it's important to recognize we're all on the same page. I mean, I feel the same thing from everybody. What we're trying to come up with is what is the best of the bad scenarios that we have on our table right now. So anyway, what didn't come up in stage 1, and this actually is probably going to have more discussion than stage 2 and stage 3, but so stage 2, I'll just introduce stage 2, and then I want to go back to something that takes place in stage 1 and stage 2 that I think probably will bring up more discussion. So ultimately, the idea was to bring this back in stages, to bring our kids back with social distancing being a priority and keeping kids safe and keeping the building healthy. And so the idea was we would present these options, and stage 1 being the first stage, although things are changing rapidly in Wisconsin, and stage 1 might change. But the idea was that this would be an ongoing discussion with the school board at a minimum every month at the regular board meetings, but could be discussed anytime. When do we change back and forth? And ultimately, it'd be great if we came up with some parameters, like the parameters of the CDC. If numbers in the county are dropping for 14 consecutive days, we can move into stage 2 or whatever that is. So we didn't even get into the parameters that would allow us to move from stage 1 to stage 2 or backwards or whatever we needed to do. So that's something, again, the board will need to consider. But at some point, when we felt we were ready to move out of stage 1, stage 2 would be bringing kids back in the building 4 days a week. We would still have that 5th day as a deep cleaning day and a virtual instruction day. And again, there are several reasonings for that. And one of them is that we're pretty sure that we're going to have families who are choosing a variety of options, and staff are going to be asked to not only do face-to-face, but to incorporate virtual. And so at that stage, we still want to accommodate those wishes of families. And so in order to accommodate that virtual component, staff would need Friday to be able to connect with students who are doing virtual, to look at the virtual component of it. And so stage 2 would be bringing them back for 4 days. Again, there's still an expectation that education is happening for 5 days. They would just be face-to-face for 4 days. There's still an expectation that staff would be working for 5 days. They're just face-to-face with student for 5 days. And then the thing that I think that I missed in stage 1, part of stage 1 and stage 2, the recommendation is that the school day be shortened, that instead of the usual start time, end time, we would move the start time back a half an hour. So the buses would come a half an hour later. Buses would arrive between 8:15 and 8:30. There'd be that time for breakfast and whatever else needs to get done. And then temperature checks and all that. And then classes would start at 9, which is a half an hour later than what we traditionally have done. And then the school day would end about approximately an hour earlier. So somewhere around 2:30 rather than 3:30. And again, the rationale was recognizing that we're very likely to have virtual students with us at that during that both of those stages. And so that would give staff time to work. It would give staff time to work with those students. It also would give time for collaboration. We also recognize, we know that CDC, the American Association of Pediatrics, the Wisconsin DPI, we know that all of those organizations have very clearly stated that when we bring kids back to school, our focus has to be mental health. And so we recognize that mental health is a huge component, not only for students, but also for staff. And so one of the components of stage 1 and stage 2 in the recommendations was a reduced face-to-face contact time to accommodate those situations. I'm just going to throw out stage 3 so we don't have to come back to it separately. Stage 3 is what we all hope happens as fast as it possibly can. We want all the kids back in the building 5 days a week, back in our regular instruction.
So Rick, I was just, when you said the early release on the stage 2 and stuff like that, even in stage 1, that could give room for scattered bus routes and stuff like that could take place also. So not all kids are riding the buses all at one time.
Yes.
So that would help out there also, okay.
Yep, thank you.
Hey Jeff, have we talked with the bus department to go over a plan of any kind of maybe extra bus runs or anything like that?
Yeah, Mike Gustafson is on the transportation committee. Mike wants it to work. He's just waiting for our plan to come forward. He feels that he does have the bus drivers that will work within the plan. He doesn't see obstacles to say no on certain things. He feels confident with the drivers he has that it can be done.
Okay. My next question, I guess, and I'm just going to keep going, one other question. For the virtual classes and stuff like that, do you guys have any idea what those are going to look like? Will they look different than what they were last year? I mean, because I think they were still, I know it was just kind of sprung on all you guys, so you guys did your best you could, but now that we have a little more time to look at this, will they be more adjusted to more class time for the kids or a full classroom like on Zoom? I'm not quite sure because I think it was just, really sporadic last year and the kids are just, I don't know, I think I have a class, maybe I don't, So, and, and I understand everything, that everybody jumped into this and I think you all did a spectacular job doing that. But I was just wondering how it may look if we went that route.
Cindy, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And I should have actually brought that up. So one of the things, another recommendation, if you just look at the committee notes, you're going to see that we have several other recommendations that are maybe there may be kind of side recommendations, but they're equally as important. And one of the things that we have on there is a communication to families that this will be different. And so we need to make very clear to families, you nailed it. I mean, and this is not just Bayfield, this was across the state. Everybody was thrown into, we've retermed what happened in the spring. We started calling it virtual instruction. Everybody now is calling it, well, that was emergency instruction. We did the best we could. Most school districts, not all, but most school districts in the spring, because it was thrown on us so fast, it was a knee-jerk reaction. We did the best we could. And what we really focused on was keeping kids engaged. So we focused on engagement and enrichment. And so the compromise was that rigor and learning was not as high a priority as it was trying to keep kids engaged, because we recognized that this was for a lot of people, this was a traumatic experience. And so we just really needed to keep kids engaged, and we wanted to stay in contact with kids and keep relationships with kids. And that was our priority in the spring. We recognized last spring. I mean, we've been talking about this since last spring. We know that coming into the fall, things are potentially going to look, they have to look different. We need to teach. We need to teach to the standards. And so the idea would be that we would let families and students know that the virtual instruction that was provided outside the face-to-face time would be a more focused instruction, like what tradition, I mean, it's not going to be traditional school, but it's going to look more like traditional school than what was present in the spring. We'll go back to letter grades for middle school and high school, so it won't be on a pass-fail basis. And so one of the things that we're recommending is that be very clearly communicated to students and families, because I hear exactly what you're saying. I know, you know, we worked with the students, and you're right. They didn't know if they had to be on or didn't have to be on. They didn't know if they had to do assignments or didn't have to do assignments. And so that will definitely be different in the fall. And so our hope is that these committees can continue to work, because the instruction committee, for example, was really focused on getting something to you tonight, so that you had something like a baseline to go on. But we know that our next stage is to start talking about what's instruction going to look like. How's it going to happen? Because blended instruction is a new concept. And so we need to work together as a staff to develop what is that actually going to look like. And we need time to develop that. And we really only have about 4 to 6 weeks to figure that out. And so that needs some concentrated time to work on.
Right. Thanks, Rick.
This is Magdalene. I have one comment on that. Right now we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, but it seems like it'd be more appropriate if stage 1 was stuff's really bad and nobody's going to school and it's all virtual, but if all kids are staying home, they're not all going to be taught by a third-party system, especially if it's really bad and they need a chance to like connect to their teachers and connect to their classmates, because they're feeling really, really isolated. So I think that needs to be added to this. And I think it's really important that we have that as stage 1, and then stage 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4, because they're going to inform each other too. If we are starting everybody's virtual, taught by district staff, how does that then transition into stage 2, and how, and then I think like transitioning from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 seems more intuitive, but I am really curious about that possibility of everybody being virtual, even though that's not what we want, but it's just like, that is a real possibility.
Magdalene,
I agree with you, Magdalene, and that was one of my concerns, is because we don't know yet if, just with the COVID increasing in our area, we just don't know, you know, if we can start the year in the beginning with kids in a blended program, or if we're gonna still be, you know, doing it all virtual. So I'm glad you brought that up, and that would make sense to say that stage 1, and we may not need it, you know, maybe things will be better, but we need to be prepared for that.
I agree, Magdalene, and I'll take responsibility for that not being stage 1. There are people on the committee who want that to be stage 1. And in leading the committee, I was going under what my guidelines, what I believed I was trying to do was, it's not going to be the committee's decision whether we go back or not. And what I feel like I was trying to do was guide the committee to say, at the time when it's ready to go back, what are we going to do? So I was leaving that fully virtual thing off the table, recognizing that absolutely with the way things are going, that's a very good possibility that could happen. I really wanted to focus on when instruction begins, what's it going to look like? I totally agree with you that should be stage 1. I was just leading the committee down the road of, let's move on to what happens in the next stages.
To me, this looks like it'd be like a soft opening. You know, we open gently in steps and stages here. So I think I looked at this as being, and on September, we're gonna get kids, but this is how we're gonna do it, like a soft opening for the school. And that's how I see it. I don't know, but I think one of the things we really need to focus on is what days we are looking at setting up for school in the beginning for a soft opening, so you guys could move forward with the planning of how that's gonna look, right? Am I off track here a little bit or anything?
No, that would be helpful. I mean, that's why we appreciate that this is coming to the board in July so that we can get some guidance. And you know, you're the decision makers. These are recommendations coming from the committee. And so once you make a decision, and we also fully recognize that decision could change weekly or daily based on new situations. And we get that. But having some guidance as to, you know, is this staged return something that you are on board with? And if so, then right, we can move forward with, okay, now what's it going to look like when it happens? Because that's the nitty gritty of how, and we know there are so many pieces that are going to be different this year. We know we're going to have sub issues. We know that if we're going to be sending people home, if under any circumstances of having any symptoms, we know we're going to have staff not present at times. And so we need to start dealing with that right now, knowing that there's going to be a limitation on subs. And so that's what the committee wants to look at next, is how do we provide instruction for kids under these circumstances, under these staged returns, and being able to support staff so that we're able to do this in an effective way. So yes, you're right on, Cindy.
Rick, can you tell us more then about what it looks like when you say half the students and half the students? Because
Sure.
Our grade sizes are small. I mean, I need more information if you're wanting us to give a recommendation like that.
Sure. I can't answer you specifically, Nicole. I apologize, because what we have done, so the recommendations came to you that you have right now, that was 2 committees worth of work or 2 meetings worth of work, and that came to you. This week we've broken out and included just voluntary meetings we have a K-5 meeting that was set up that was run today, and they're meeting again tomorrow. And we have a 6-12 meeting that's meeting tomorrow. And those groups are going to look more at what it looks like, because we recognize it's very likely to look different for K-5 than it is for 6-12. I can give you some possible scenarios about what's been talked about, but I don't know that any recommendations have come out of those groups yet. So I can tell you that at K-5, and I'm speaking out of my wheelhouse right now, so I'm speaking from what I've heard from K-5, and I could be totally off base. But what I've heard as options is that I know that the splits have already been made. So they've talked about bringing in half of the first grade. So one of the first grade teachers group would come in on Monday, Tuesday, and they would split that group in half. So the 2 first grade teachers would have half of that group. And then on Wednesday, Thursday, the other split would come in. And again, they'd split those kids. And remember, the whole concept is, it's not just reducing the number of kids in the building, it's also keeping them socially distanced. So it wouldn't be like taking in one class and putting them all in one room. It would be taking that class, splitting them up so that they have more space to use for that half the number of kids. But they're talking about other ways to look at that also. But that's the one that I've heard. In the middle school, high school, I know in the middle school, what I've heard so far is, again, they're split. They have 6A, 6B, 7A, 7B. So they've talked about bringing in like 6A, 7A, 8A, Monday and Tuesday, and then 6B, 7B, 8B, Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday. That's one way to do it. High school is looking at maybe bringing in the freshmen and sophomores one day and the juniors and seniors one day. But those discussions are really just beginning. So we don't have the answers to those right now. And we're looking for, again, my feeling is the more voices at the table, the better. We're looking for input. If you have suggestions, and we also have documents, I've shared them with all staff. That's actually, I have a question. When I share things with all staff, do board members get that? So, my intent when I share those documents is to make sure everybody gets them. I want things to be as transparent and on the table as possible. So I'll work with Chris and Jeff. I just want to, so anything we do, I'll make sure you're shared with those. So I've created documents like the instruction committee minutes and agenda that's been shared with all staff. And I want you guys to have them too, so you can see what we're doing in real time. So I'll make sure you have that. But we also then have created a document, Nicole, specifically related to what you're asking, like what would those splits look like? How would we bring in half? And so those recommendations aren't set yet. They're still being discussed.
Rick, this is Magdalene. We don't get the all staff emails, but
Okay.
you can email board and
Oh, okay.
that goes to all of us. But Chris, I was going to send something to board the other day and I noticed that Rocky and Craig are still on there. So that group email needs to be updated, whoever does that.
It was just updated today and they did not receive that because their accounts are disabled.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I'll just add board. When I do all staff, I'll also send it to board so you have access to that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you editing access. I'm just going to give you viewing access.
I just have a thought. If, Rick, you mentioned that getting subs might be difficult and finding people. And I know when you hire subs, people apply ahead of time, but you just call them kind of 6 a.m. in the morning because I've been one of those subs. So I'm wondering if you guys have talked about having, instead of hiring someone for random days and they don't know when they're coming in, could we possibly, if whatever plan we come up with looks like it needs assistance, reach out to those subs and just ask if they could be available for sure certain days a week. It just might make it a little bit easier. I don't know if we considered that.
We haven't talked about that. I mean, all of those things are on the table. I think this speaks kind of to Glenn's thing, and I don't know the details of this. I know that there are districts who just hire a sub who's a permanent sub, and so that's an employment issue, which brings up other issues. And the reality is, in our district, typically one sub isn't the issue. It's a matter of getting however many subs we need that day. I mean, one of the things that's being talked about on Nicole, and this goes back to Nicole's question, one of the things that's being talked about in the split meetings right now is this idea of, how do we utilize our current staff to support each other? I mean, could we break up into cohorts so that if somebody ends up being out if they're in isolation or if they're being quarantined or whatever, that we have the capability within our own staff. And yes, it puts an added stress on our staff, yet we also recognize that under the current circumstances, it's a pretty good possibility that that's what it's going to come down to, because we want our students taught by professional teachers. And we also, we want to be able to support the staff as much as we possibly can. So all of those things are being talked about in these split meetings.
Just a comment before we move on in regards to Magdalene's question on virtual day, in terms of just have it virtual. That is talked about at the state level, and it's also been talked about at the county level. Holly Weber joined us today, works for Bayfield County Health Department. And if our area or the school district of Bayfield, if we have a uptick and there's a certain percentage, they will shut us down and we'd have to go virtually for a while. So that could happen. Secondly, the school board has the authority to do all virtual to begin the school year. There is some school districts now, not only in Wisconsin, but throughout the nation, particularly the larger districts that don't have enough staffing and transportation and those types of things. They've already called for virtual only. So that would be, that could be a potential. And it could be the state governor calling it all virtual too, sometime in mid-August to late August. So depends on what's going on in terms of the increase of COVID.
Jeff, was there any talk about possibly like starting school like a month later or things like that?
I've been attending weekly meetings throughout the state, and no, that hasn't come up. It's the opposite. A lot of districts are trying to start earlier. They want to get the kids in earlier so they can assess them, see if they where they're at, so they can plan accordingly. So in that respect, more of the emphasis has been bringing kids in earlier than later.
I have a question. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
We
go ahead.
can. Go ahead.
I wish that there was like a chat option so I wouldn't have to like do this. But anyways, hey everybody, I think everybody knows me. I'm Clarissa. No, I just had a question about like I know it was just sprung on y'all and everybody last semester, but I just noticed a big difference in like some people had like the awesomest virtual experience and they were like, I didn't even have to do anything and it was just like smooth as butter and it was great. And some people like really struggled, like I was really trying, and I just noticed that there was like a difference in the teacher's abilities like to work with technology. Is there like gonna be like maybe like a training, or like where they like maybe they can all meet and like get on somewhat like the same page, like, hey, like this is how I do it, or and it's worked, or you know what I mean, or like to bounce ideas off each other. And because me and my sister live right next door and we had completely different perspectives and we went through totally different things during that time. Like she was super informed and I was super like, what the hell's going on, So I just wanted to ask if they were going to be like, because I mean, Jeff, that could happen. Like, how many COVID cases does it take to shut down the school? Like, is it just going to be one and done? Like, there has to be a backup plan.
Yeah, Bayfield County Health Department is working on that particular idea right now. And maybe Rick can expand on the professional development. The school board last month approved funding for our teachers to, once this plan is established and once there's a framework and we know how many kids are coming in versus not, then our teachers with their principals are going to be working on a training. They're going to have professional development to work on those things that you're describing, Clarissa. Maybe there are some staff that are more familiar with that landscape versus the others, and some staff are doing much better than others just because of the familiarity with it. So those things are going to happen in the next 4 weeks beyond this plan. Once this plan is approved, like Rick said, from the operations perspective, once the plan is approved, then we can then focus on a survey to the parents, how many kids are going to be here virtually versus in person. Once we get those numbers, then we can start planning those classrooms accordingly.
This is Magdalene. I wonder if now is also a good time to talk about Canvas as a learning management system and the district moving forward with that, teachers being trained on that. Possibly we hire somebody to facilitate that and then be like on call to families and teachers. But I know Clarissa's used Canvas because LCO College uses Canvas, and there's so much that's user-friendly about it that really it's just, I believe, like a really great tool for teachers to have, especially during this time, but that they can continue to use into the future. So I think everybody learning that will be a benefit to the whole community and to the students. Canvas and other learning management systems like Blackboard, et cetera, are what colleges use to manage their learning. And colleges don't use Google Classroom. Google Classroom is also a tool, but if you're going to compare the two, Google Classroom is like Notebook is to Word when it comes to word processing. There's just so many more options and it's so much more user friendly. And I think that that may be something that could help Clarissa, obviously, you know, even within the college, every instructor is different in how well versed they are with it and how much they utilize it. But at least it's like one platform that everybody understands and is pretty user friendly.
This would be a good opportunity. Thank you, Magdalene. Chris, Linda, if we could pull up the technology slide. Chris, can you go over the Canvas portion, and also for Clarissa and the parents that are listening, there is the program offers a parent and student training platform.
Yeah, so we purchased Canvas and we are in the process of rolling that out. It's a learning management system to replace Google Classroom. Some of the features that I really like are the look and feel. It's a lot easier to use than Google Classroom. It has a lot more options for teachers to present their materials. They can still use their Google materials that they have, but they can add all sorts of other apps into their lesson plans. There'll be a lot more video options, a lot more interactive options, and I think it'll be be a lot more engaging for students. The other thing was that based on the parent surveys, parents really wanted to know what was going on in the classroom, and they were not receiving that information in a timely manner. Part of that is because we were flying by the seat of our pants when this all started. And part of that was because the tools that are built into Google Classroom are not very good on communication. And that is a strong point of the Canvas platform. There's an app for parents and an app for teachers and an app for students. And the student calendars can also be shared with their parents. So they can pull up their Google Calendar, whatever they use for calendars, and they can see when the tests are, when the assignments are for each and every class of their student. Google was also limited to emails for communications, and they're just summaries of what went on for the week or what went on for the day. Canvas has a lot more options. They have chat options. They can let you know when work's not being turned in a timely manner. Just a lot of different things. It's a really nice platform. As far as training goes, I know that the teachers all get, as soon as we get them all signed up, they will have a course already built in. They'll teach them how to use it. In addition to that, we're working on scheduling some webinars so that we can have some direct training from Canvas trainers. And the teachers will also have 24/7 access to the help portal, including chat support from live people. And I guess the response time is usually under 2 minutes. So they can get their answers, or the answers to their questions quickly, which is super helpful. I'm not sure about the level of training for parents and for students, but from looking at the apps, it's very intuitive. There's not too many buttons to look at. It's all flows really nicely, and it's really easy to figure out where your classes are, what's going on, what's due, what tests are coming up. All the expectations are right there in front of you in a dashboard. So it's looks like a terrific platform. So that is in progress. And we hope to have that rolled out in the next couple of weeks to get our staff signed in and start training.
So this is Johanna Wilson, just quickly. With the new Canvas stuff and we're looking at virtual things, have you guys, I'm sure you've thought about it, but rolling it out and doing like kind of a hands-on walkthrough with parents? Because that was the struggle with the Google Classroom, is, and we all did the best we could. We did great, in my opinion. But with me taking online courses and stuff, finishing my degree, pretty easy for me to navigate, figure it out. Those parents who don't really do a whole lot of stuff on technology, you know, it'd be nice to have kind of like an interactive walkthrough of how to use Canvas.
Indeed. I think that there are training materials available on the Canvas website. And one of the things that I plan on doing is creating a help site, portion of the school webpage that will have links to the videos and any other training materials that are available from Canvas. And, you know, my experience with Google Classroom is that it's good enough, but it's not intuitive. My experience so far with Canvas, just logging in and looking around at it a little bit, it's much more intuitive, and I have a lot fewer questions, spend a lot less time looking around and trying to figure out how to do stuff because it's all right there in front of you, just a click or two away. But yes, I would like to have training materials out there for parents, for students, and for staff.
And Joe, I'm gonna, if I can add on to that, yes, the instruction committee has talked about that, not just virtual trainings, because you have advocates. I mean, one cool thing about these committees is there are a lot of people on there, and we have people who say, yeah, that's awesome for people who are able to learn virtually, but I need face-to-face instruction. And so, yes, we have talked about having opportunities for whether it's one-on-one or whether it's bringing in small groups of people. So we recognize the need for that. And so, yes, we will advocate that be available for people so that they can learn to navigate it.
Just a quick note for Johanna and Clarissa and the others. Once we establish the program at the plan, we are going to do a communication blitz to the community. And part of that is surveying, providing a survey for each family, for yourself and others. And on that survey, we're going to ask those types of questions. If you'd like training, are you going to have virtual versus in-person for your children? Those types of questions. And then we could follow up with you afterwards if you want additional training for Canvas, whatever learning platform we're using. So we plan on doing that after this plan is approved.
Jeff, I was also thinking too that, you know, let's utilize our community. We have so many tech savvy people out here that pull a bunch of them in and get some training on it to help out with the families out here, you know, or in the community all over. I think, I know COVID's here and the big thing would be going into someone's home, but there are people that are, you know, they're willing to help out as best they can by even a phone call, walking you through it, you know, and I think we have enough people in our community that are technology savvy on it that can help out also. We just need to reach out and utilize that.
Yes.
Jeff, this is Esme. I'm just wondering if parents need the training, which I would as a parent, so I totally understand that, and teachers need the time maybe to train themselves or their students or the parents of their students. I'm wondering if when we go back, when we have this plan in place, if maybe we just designate a couple days and arrange for the teacher to meet virtually or over the phone with each of the parents. And then it's not something that they're doing on top of their work day. It's just a designated day, even if that pushes the actual school period back a couple days, if we just take the first two or something like that to get everybody off to a good start.
Yeah, that's a good question. I attended a area meeting today with CISA 12, and there is a school district in our region that is using the first or 2 days of school for that purpose, for that, bringing people in, parents, going over their platforms, going over different things for that purpose. So we could do that.
This is Magdalene. I just want to make one quick comment building on this and the comment from before about the possibility that there may be the need that we're all virtual to begin the year, or at any point within the year, there may be a rise and we say, okay, we have to like shut school down. I do believe, Rick, I'm hearing everything that you say, that there are teachers who want to teach in person, are challenged to teach virtually. I feel like we're in a situation where I need to feel confident that even if it's not their preference, and that every teacher in the district is able to teach virtually, because we just might have to. And I know that we did that in the spring, and I want to just continue to move forward with that. of course, with the goal that as much in-person learning will be offered as possible, but that we can pivot. I'm really concerned that we don't separate it out and just have in-person teachers and third-party virtual. Like, we need to be able to shift, and each teacher needs to feel like grounded and like they can make that shift, and they can feel confident in making that shift if they need to. So however the 2-day a week, however stage 1 or 2 is planned, it needs to be a stepping stone from one to the other, and teachers need to be prepared to pivot and feel grounded and like they can do that. So
I agree with you, Magdalene.
So we still have the technology slide up, and if we could go through that briefly. Internet access is on there. Chris, I'm hoping you're still here. We're looking to have better internet for the families. Of course, when we survey our families in a week or in a couple of weeks, once we establish a plan and we survey them, we're going to ask for internet access. Chris is working on that part of it to make sure that we can provide for our families who may be having difficulties at this time. It talks about individual devices, technical support, and then learning access, record in classroom lessons for absent students. So that's some ideas that have coming out from the technology area. Chris, is there anything you want to add to that before we move on to the next slide?
No, but the internet access is an important piece, and I'm really hoping that we can get a lot more information than we did last year about people's access to the internet. We are unable to just purchase internet for people, unfortunately. I would love to be able to do that, but we can't. But we can provide hotspots for where cellular access is robust enough to handle them. So that's our plan so far. And we'll be connecting people with other programs that are available at this time. And DPI also is working with the state. There's a state task force that was just announced this week for rural broadband access. So hopefully we'll be finding, getting some more options from that as well.
Thank you. Linda, could you go to physical spaces and operation? This is basically facilities. I wanted to run by a couple of things to the board. Then after that, we'll go to wellness, but we'll go to physical spaces. All right, so we're gonna have, I don't know if any facilities people are here. Dave or Terry?
Jeff, this is Terry. I'm here.
Oh, perfect. So just wanted to go through some things with the board to let them know what we've done thus far. Terry, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Do you want to go through some of this, or do you want me to start off on it?
You can start if you'd like.
Okay, so physical barriers, we're looking at plexiglass barriers in public spaces. This would be in the bathroom area for boys and between the urinals. Floor adhesives, we're gonna make sure that our floor identify in the hallways and everywhere, basically that six foot separation, stickers in high traffic areas. Safety signage that's been ordered. We have some that has already been put up on the playground. There's been signage, additional signage throughout the building. Drinking water, we turned off all the bubblers. And the only thing that works now is the water bottle. So you put your water bottle under the drinking fountain, that'll come down, but the actual fountain itself, that's been turned off. So I don't know how many stations throughout the building for that for kids and staff, but they'll have to bring their own water bottle for that. Sanitation stations, increased placement and encourage uses. More temperature devices. We ordered. Jackie, if you're online, how many thermometers are we looking to order for everybody?
I think we were going to order 500. But I was kind of waiting to see what happened in these meetings I have with the symptom checking system, because one of those I know they provide a thermometer with that system.
And our goal was one for every staff member and student.
One for every family and one for every staff member.
Locker uses, the lockers will be locked for the first quarter through October 30th. No rooms will be available for kids. So FIAD and those types of things would have to be done differently. And creating space, removal of furniture in classrooms, etc. And then this is an interesting one we came up with that's necessary, a COVID symptom isolation room. So Jackie can expound on this, but basically if we have a student who arrives or a staff member who comes to Jackie's area, the nurse's room or an office and says, look, I think I have COVID, all right, I have the symptoms. We are developing a separate space within the school building, which is probably going to be the elementary conference room. That's right adjacent to Jackie's office. There's 2 doors that lead right into that room. That'll be the isolation room. And so if a student is exhibiting or staff member, we would put them there and then call the parents or call somebody to come in to help them out. Any questions on the physical spaces, operations in terms of space usage within the building?
So if they're exhibiting, I mean, just a fever or a runny nose or cough or, I mean, basically any, I don't know, like then they get sent to there, or if they're like, I think I have COVID, or I think you have COVID.
Yeah, Clarissa, Jackie would be the one, our school nurse, to monitor that situation and to provide the recommendation to the parents. At that point.
What about asymptomatic spread? There's been cases of people that don't have fevers or coughs or anything.
Yeah, and Jackie, you want to take that, or Holly? That's a good one. Those are the ones we don't know of. You
I
wouldn't
don't
know.
think Holly, I'm not sure if Holly is here with us. That's the same as anywhere, you know, that's what we got to be looking at what our numbers are and in our community and when we close down. I don't know what else to say about asymptomatic spread. If someone isn't showing symptoms, you know, we've asked about mass testing. That isn't available at this time unless it's kind of the cart in front of the horse or whatever that saying is. But, you know, the only way we get mass testing is if we have mass numbers and they close if our school ends up being closed down, then the National Guard comes in and does that type of thing. But, you know, at this time, I don't know what to say about that. If someone is asymptomatic, I can't tell until they're tested, or no one can tell. So,
well,
you know,
Jackie,
that's why we're doing the protections, you know, like we're trying to do everything possible to make the spaces safe. So if you are an asymptomatic carrier, that your risk of transmission is extremely low.
So will we have a policy on students wearing masks? I haven't seen that yet. Or teachers any mask wearing? I mean, that's the only thing we have to prevent asymptomatic transmission. I'm just wondering, what's the problem?
That's in the wellness part. And yeah, the wellness committee is recommending that there is a policy that masks are required. Of course, that takes into consider exceptions that, you know, people with health conditions, they can't wear a mask, you know, so that we're trying to take that into consideration as well. Obviously, not everyone can wear a mask, but anyone that can will be required. How we enforce that completely, we haven't actually, you know, worked through finessed through that on if a student or if they are refusing to wear a mask, or the younger kids, it's hard for them. They're going to be pulling at that. They're going to be, you know, chewing on it. those are questions we've got to figure out still.
This is Magdalene. I want to make 2 comments on that. I was having a conversation with a couple teachers about the elementary teachers about this the other day. And as I was talking to them, I realized, I don't let my son be out in public really much at all, but there is an occasion where I've let him go into the gas station and pick out an ice cream treat and said, you have to put your mask on. And he puts that mask on so fast because he is so excited to like be doing this thing that he's been denied for so long. So that's just one thought I have. Obviously that could wear off once you're in school, and all kids are different, but kids might be more on board than we are giving them credit for. Another thing I want to say, the other recommendation, so face masks and being outside. And this is something that I have not seen in this plan yet, and I want to see in this plan. I want teachers to bring students outside as much as possible. The more that we can be doing outside learning, whether that means going into the school forest or whatever it looks like, but the more that we're outside, the safer that the students will be and the staff will be.
So this is Jackie. Magdalene, I'll speak to both of those. And maybe it isn't outlined in the slide presentation, but it is in the notes, the committee notes. And I believe that was the instructional committee too, that outdoor learning will take place as much as possible. And then as far as, compliance with masks, we've been talking through this, that, in those first days that we are back in school, that is part of instruction, that we're not jumping into academics, it's mental health, and it's trying to teach kids, making sure that they know the importance, why they're wearing a mask, why that's important, why they need to wash their hands. Are they washing their hands correctly? Are they applying hand sanitizer correctly? Kind of trying to teach them those basic skills before, and then addressing that mental health piece, social, emotional too, before moving into the usual stuff, I guess I will say.
Thanks, Jackie.
I would have to say on that subject about the mask and stuff too, that the more you're at school, the more they see other kids doing it, they learn it faster and they work together. And you may have that one or two where it's like absolutely refuses. I don't know what you can say. Maybe you can put that in your plan that if a child refuses, we're not going to force them to put it back on because that might traumatize the child even more. So, I mean, it's just little things to look like, but kids learn faster by having peers around and doing it. So I think we should just kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, one example of the mask, another school district in the area, what they're doing, what Esme talked about earlier, is that they're going to do it the first 2 days of school. They're going to do training in the classroom, and they're going to have videos to show kids that if you're 6 feet away from someone that's marked within your classroom, you could take that mask off at that particular moment. As soon as somebody comes in your space, you have to put the mask back on. So the idea that it's mandatory, yes, but at the same time, they're teaching other behaviors for social distancing that a student could have that mask off if they're socially distant. That's at another district, but I thought I'd share.
Yeah, this is Jackie again. I hadn't heard that, but I think we need to be careful with that too, and how we proceed with it. Just an
example, Jackie, just an example. I wanted to share that.
Thank you.
And
This
just
is
because,
it is important to consider because they have to drink water and they have to eat, so there's going to be some things that you can't do with a mask on. So if they're taught to keep distance when doing those things, that helps.
My other concern would be though too is with children that have asthma and, you know, allergies and stuff, that's hard for them to breathe with the mask on. I have a grandson that he had it on 10 minutes and he had to pull it away from his face for a little bit, but he's learning how to cope with it, but he's older. You know, the younger ones may not be able to tell you, I can't breathe, you know, so, but I mean, it's just things to look at too. So how are we gonna face those challenges?
Would it be possible now to pivot into the wellness area? It's a big part of our program. Rick talked about it earlier. We talked about trauma. We talked about emotion. And beyond wellness, the last slide would be athletics. I have some information on that, but if we can go to the wellness and representative from the wellness committee, if you could talk about your slide and the whole idea of what your discussions have been about.
Hi, everybody. This is Carla Vinci. They thought I was the best person to be the teacher leader. I'm not quite sure why, but here I am. So this slide that we're seeing right now, as I look over this, it has, like Rick was saying, we've met, I can't remember if we've met twice or 3 times, but we really just did feel like we were getting into, you know, we were really getting into it and really like making some progress. And then we were told that we were done because we were going to be giving this to the boards so they could submit it. And we asked if we could continue to meet because we just feel that what we have on our plate is really, really important. And like we've all said already, it's new, it's fluid, it's flexible, it's ever changing. You know, we don't know where we're going to be tomorrow, in July and in August. Anyway, safety and well-being for staff and students and staff, of course, continues to be our #1 priority. Giving staff, somebody had mentioned earlier that this has been a trauma and a loss and a, you know, unexpected upheaval in our lives as well. You know, we want to be in school, we want to be with students, we want to be doing what we love to do, and we're not able to do most of that right now. So giving staff that time to get together and to train, to learn, to support each other. I think that went along with maybe the late start or the early release time to have small groups of staff, because again, meetings are a question. You know, how are we going to be able to meet in person? Are those going to be small cohorts of groups of staff? And we haven't even gotten to that yet, just those ideas. Again, having some training, like we've talked about how important it'll be for Canvas, to also do trauma-focused training, to make sure that we have protocols in place, as Jackie mentioned a little bit about just orientating to our new normal, how our school is different, how our classroom is different, how we're different, how we're the same. Going forward, how do we stay, you know, safe and keep anyway. So there's a lot of information coming out on COVID, books that I've seen mostly online, that certainly can be used as well to educate students about COVID in the classroom, and have protocols and information for teachers. Definitely doing the reteaching of the PBIS that has been in place in Bayfield for many years, the behavior matrix, and having that in the context of COVID, how we treat each other, how we support each other, how we don't make fun of each other, how, you know, some hard things may happen and how do we support each other when that does, and use that beginning of the year time that we're back together. How does that look virtually? We don't know, a little different, but that's appropriate as well. So what else? Just touch a little bit about the meetings, the mental health supports. As you can read there, we're working collaboratively with Redcliffe Behavioral Health and their staff. They continue to meet the needs and be available for our students. How's that going to look for them right now? They're virtual. Probably will continue that. Also, we'll, I'm sure, go with the plan as far as what ours is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. I think it's important that we invite the staff that can participate and join our wellness committee meeting from here forward. I think it's important that we also invite them to join us, as we did have Holly join us from Bayfield County Health Department, and also Dr. Darling, and I think Diane Erickson is also going to be invited to join us if they can, as the wellness committee continues to meet. Again, you know, students that aren't, students that want to go virtual, my experience with that has been, sometimes it's an option that, you know, students are real interested in, and then just can be difficult because it can be isolating, and it can get to the point where you know, maybe they're not connecting with the school anymore. And then that virtual academy or school will let us know that the student isn't attending and isn't doing, you know, the required work. And then they're our student again. So I think maintaining contact with with all of our students is really important, however we're doing instruction or however we're coming back together. That's something that's on there. And then, of course, I just went to a training last Thursday through DPI that talked about universal screening for students, and where we can do some social emotional behavior screening. And also, we know we might want to think about academic screening as well. Some of the information that I received in that training was that 20% of all students have needs during their school years, their K-12 school years. And this one statistic was 20% of those students actually receive services during just normal times. So, you know, evaluating what kind of assessments are available and would meet our needs, I think would be something that we will want to continue to talk about. We talked about just having, you know, a consistent message coming from the district, you know, about what we're trying to do when we are back together, as far as keeping everybody safe, you know, when to send your student to school. Like Jackie said, we have only talked about, you know, if that's temperature taking and if the symptom checks are at the bus stop. I mean, we haven't even figured that out. We've talked a lot about it. Well, that's going to be really weird. That's going to be really hard. You know, how's that going to work? And we didn't come up with any answers. And then again, just working with Bayfield County, because they will provide us the direction and the guidance. And Holly is our liaison. And let's see, I had some other notes. Oh, just to update our school website with, you know, DPI has lots and lots of resources. Put Bayfield County's website, COVID-19 link on there. Just resources for families and for communities, decision trees. Just maybe update our website, because we probably haven't done that since spring. And I think that's about it for now. Oh, well, masks, we did talk about taking donations for masks. Some community members are wanting to make some and donate them, and we have said that we will accept mask donations. Jackie, did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything? Anybody else?
Thank you, Carla. We appreciate it. Before we go to athletics, Terry, did you have anything from facilities that you wanted to hit on that you and Terry or you and Dave might have wanted to throw out at this time, or did we catch it all?
It sounds like we've caught a majority of everything just throughout the day. We were looking at possibly bringing on another 2 individuals to assist in cleaning. I know recommendations are, say, bathrooms. They recommend those bathrooms be sanitized every hour. Right now, with only the couple workers during the day, that would be fairly impossible because that would be a circle of work that they're doing. And I think everything else was pretty much hit that I know of.
Thanks, Terry. We'll move on to the last slide. I might have, if I missed one, please tell me. I know for the food service, there was a question of, are we providing food for students at home? Yes, we would continue that path as we did this summer. And Karen her program would just continue to deliver it weekly, or twice a week for those families for those 2 or 3 days. At least that's what I'm hearing locally, that we would continue the food program for those kids at home virtually. So that might have been a question that came up tonight. Now, how that works out, Karen obviously has to dig into that and call other districts to find out what they're doing. But I called Washburn last week and they are continuing their food program. So athletics, Barb, are you online? So I'll give a brief update on athletics. I attended the statewide meeting yesterday, and right now WIAA, they are pushing everything. They are making 0 decisions to the district level. So we as a district can determine athletics for the fall, whether the kids are going to practice, play, whether we allow adults in the gym to watch athletics. That'll be a district decision. That is in its early stages. We're looking to have a meeting with the area schools soon. We'll have more information to follow for that. But the athletics, that's pretty much the update. It's up in the air right now.
This is Jackie. Jeff,
Yep.
can I add
Yes.
to that? I think we missed that in the wellness, unless I didn't hear Carla say it, but wellness is recommending that sports are on hold unless they are outdoor and non-contact type sports. That those could possibly be considered, but anything like a volleyball, wrestling, basketball. There were for the beginning of the year at least, we're not participating in those.
This is Magdalene. I really support that, Jackie, too. And this is from somebody who, sports have been important to me and are important to me, and are also a really big part of wellness. So I wonder if we can develop some alternatives, like a running club, but if we can just think about ways to offer sports that are not contact, that are outdoors and are even socially distanced, and that some of the energy, instead of trying to figure out how to do how sports have been in the past, which is just really not possible during these times, I think, but what do we replace it with and put our energy into that? I would appreciate that.
This is Jackie again. So yeah, and golf was one of those that came up, as well as, a socially distanced sport. And man, we have a beautiful golf course in our area. So I don't think we have that as an option right now. I'm not positive, but tennis was another one that was brought up.
Yeah, the athletic decision, and I said this before, athletics, it's not an entitlement. In other words, it's not part of our instructional model. So what we decide to do as a district is for the best interest of the kids. And I'm guessing that there'll be alternative programs out there regionally for kids to participate in, but I'm guessing most school districts are going to shut things down, with the exception of some of the things that Magdalene said. So we'll continue that path.
We could buy every kid a lacrosse stick.
That we could.
So I'll just add to that, that a point that Holly Weber brought up to us yesterday at our wellness meeting, that when you are, when you're in a talking state, the safe distance is 6 feet, is what they're saying for transmission. When you get to where you're winded and you're actually breathing heavy and hard, that goes to 36 feet. And I don't have the resources to back that up. I'm not sure where she got those statistics, but I will just put out there that that was one of her concerns.
All right. Like I said, athletics is a moving target. We'll get more information from the region. I know other schools are shutting things down here and there, so that'll come later. So did we miss any other committee reports that you all may want to talk about before we come to summation and I have a statement I need to make at the end?
This is Missy. I'd just like to share that third-party vendor that we've talked about. And we've looked at these third-party vendors a while back prior to this situation, because it's a way of drawing those kids that are moving out of our district to come back as an alternative option for the full-time virtual learning. So one of the parties we had contacted before that Ashland School District uses, they're no longer available. They've met their capacity. However, the one that Washburn is utilizing, Northwoods, there's several other schools about our size that are using something called Eduseer, and it's not using it, it's an option. There's no MOU, there's no sign-on, there's no upfront dollar amount that we would have to put forth for this virtual programming. But Eduseer is a K-12 virtual program. It can provide individual courses or full-fledged online virtual learning options for students. It's $995 per seat. It's personal learning coach. They have a coach and a teacher that's certified to work with our students, parents, as well as a teacher would also help monitor that on a regular basis. They adapt the courses to meet IEPs. There's an instant teacher who the student and family has access to during a school calendar. Now, they're not available outside of a school calendar, but for the most part, longer days than what our teachers currently work. How the system works is students can start it if they feel like after 1 week, this just isn't their thing and that they need to go back. There's no penalty. There's no withdrawal penalties to the district. If it's a semester course or programming, they have 3 to 4 days to withdraw without penalty. The district doesn't lose that money. The seat is still there. The seat is available for another student to utilize or to obtain. So just giving you a sense of what Eduseer has to offer, that's the only one that we have talked to at this point. Like I said, Rural Virtual was another one. They aren't available because they've met their capacity at this point. There's no MOU, there's nothing. It just serves as another option. So just giving you information.
Thank you, Missy.
Hey, Missy, I got a question though. So if a family is enrolled in the school district and they choose to remain enrolled but do completely virtual, they would still receive the other benefits from the school district. So they would receive the food service and maybe any extracurriculars and all of those components. So just to be clear that families understand, if they're choosing to disenroll from the district and go virtual or go homeschooling on their own, that they lose those benefits that they would have as an enrolled student in our district.
Correct. Thanks for that clarification, Nicole. Yes, exactly. So this is just another option. They're still our student. It's just another teacher facilitating a full online programming to kind of, like Rick had alluded to before, that's a big undertaking for staff to wear all those hats and to learn all of those. It's a totally different teaching process. And so this just, that takes that off their plate, so to speak, if a family chooses this route, but they're still technically our student. They're full-time. We receive their state dollars as we normally would. We just pay the seat purchase price to have that teacher coaching that student or teaching that student those classes.
And what if they're a special ed student then, and they choose to disenroll and go on their own homeschool?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Homeschool is totally a different process. That they're no longer a student within our district. They aren't eligible to participate in the food program. They're not eligible to participate in sports. Homeschool is just that. It's private, home-based education, and that's on the parents to determine and to pay for the programming and to support their children.
And even if they're an identified special ed student, the school has no responsibility, or who has the responsibility then, purely on the side of the parent?
To provide special ed services and supports. They're withdrawing from the district and choosing to do private, home-based. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I need to add to that also. If they're a student from Bayfield and they're in a special ed program, and the special ed team, IEP team, chooses EduSeer, that would be called a homeschool. They would still be under the umbrella of the district. If the parent de-enrolls a student and goes through DPI, that would be called home base, and they wouldn't receive the benefits of the district. So EduSeer is a program. We've used other programs for special ed kids and regular ed kids who need.
Jeff, I hate to cut you off. Can I just
Well,
just a little wording correction there? Homebound. So for special, it would be homebound for an
Yeah.
IEP.
Yes, but the IEP team could choose to put them in a specialized virtual program, and we would not lose them as a student.
Yep, correct.
I
But
wanna
it's
make clarification.
homebound. Yep.
Homebound versus home base, right? Home base is when they go to DPI, when they de-enroll. Homebound is where we put them as a district, or we decide to put them somewhere else.
I just have a question. Sorry, is there a committee just for dealing with special ed students, or are the teachers for each student, the special ed teachers, are they just responsible for designing their own very unique program for each student? Because I know, I think each one of those students in the special ed programs, whatever age they're at, they all have their own IEP, and whatever plan we create for students in the regular ed program might be fine, but each student is going to have, each student with an IEP is going to have their own special requirements and needs that we need to meet. Is there, are we giving those teachers the responsibility or the leniency, however you want to put it, to manage those families or to make a plan with those families?
So staff have been really great about sharing their thoughts and ideas. An example of that would be 2 of our high school staff members had brought forth a plan or an idea to say, hey, how about I be the regular ed teacher and I'm providing in-house instruction while the other one would be the virtual teacher. So there's some team teaching happening and just thinking outside the box. But that's all we have gotten to, is just, it's really difficult because staff aren't in right now. So it's been great for those that have touched base and are really thinking outside that box and bringing those ideas forward, because they sure have some great ideas. But that's what we have so far as special ed goes, is just really working on each other's strengths and looking at one being a virtual teacher while one is an in-house teacher providing those supports.
This is Magdalene. I also agree that at this point in time, or like soon after this kind of framework is like, we have a framework that we say, okay, this is what we're kind of all in consensus of, this is the framework. Then we need more in-depth planning by subcommittees about what that instruction looks like at the high school, the middle school, the elementary, kindergarten, special ed, alt ed, and the point. And then I don't know if there'd even be an option. I floated the idea with a couple people about having an outdoor immersion, Ojibwe immersion program in Redcliffe that could also be an option for families, either part-time or full-time. But breaking it down into these smaller groups and really focusing in, because for a while, it's good to have an instruction committee that has people from all the different areas informing this framework. But we're getting very close to the point where, in order to like continue to work effectively and productively, we need to break down into subcommittees and work out the details of what it looks like, because high school is going to be different from the island, is going to be different from elementary. And maybe that also means compensating staff since they are off, as you said, Missy, but I think all staff want to have a plan that works for them too. I don't think that we can completely make decisions without people chiming in on how we're going to make it work. At some point, we do need all hands on deck to get there. And just another feeling of mine is that my feeling is that each classroom teacher, like, I would like to see a lot of trust. I'd like to see trust that the classroom teacher who is assigned for her group of students, so if it's one first grade teacher that already has a classroom of 17 kids, that I'm just trusting that she is going to manage it how she needs to manage it for that group. Or maybe it's the kindergarten team deciding that they need to manage it how it looks like for the kindergarten, and that they're reaching out to families and they're getting the information from those families of what their preferences are. It's not us here making assumptions about what that looks like at each grade level. And it might look really different. There may be a lot of third graders that are all wanting virtual, and there may be other classes that are wanting all in person, and we need to be able to adjust to that. So kind of rambling.
Magdalene, I think what I'm hearing is that each classroom needs its own COVID-19 IEP.
Hey, I agree, you guys. This is what we've talked about in our wellness committee. We said every kid should have their own IEP. Lori Erickson said that 100 times, quote unquote. Every kid needs their own individual plan. And we couldn't agree with you 100% about all of this. LaPointe is going to look a little different. And we also have discussed the fact that each of our teachers, we have to consider their health and their safety and well-being. Each of them has their own conditions too that could be a factor in all of this. And how do we address that? So there's a lot of sensitivity and equity in this. So we have to really have that equity lens and look through that when we're looking at this for everybody's health, safety, and well-being. And boy, it's a daunting task, I'll tell you that. And we've been working so hard to look at things from all angles, and certainly appreciate your feedback and input. And just know that it's greatly appreciated. And we are, like I said, and Rick had pointed out, we're meeting again tomorrow so that we can take your points and to start looking at things deeper and wider and trying to figure out how we can come up with the best plan for the fall, with uncertainties. I mean, that's the crazy part. It's very uncertain.
This is Magdalene, and personally, I'm on board with an IEP for every student during this year of COVID, and maybe that lays the foundation for a future school that operates that way, if that is possible. And like, as an example, you said LaPointe's going to be different. Well, there's nobody I trust more than Kate to be communicating with families, to be sharing where she's at and how she thinks she can run things, and that Kate and those families come up with their plan for LaPointe, and then bring it back to us, you know, to say we have a plan and this is what it is, but that their plan may look really different from the rest of the district, and that I can trust her to have that communication, because she already has that communication and that trust with those families.
Hi, this is Johanna. Just something really quick as we're talking about IEPs and stuff. My kids have it as well, and then kind of reiterate back to the mask thing. And maybe Jackie may have discussed this in her committee group, but I'm in a program where I've been working with ECC, and we're discussing the possibility of having face shields for those that are unable to wear the mask, but also keeping in mind that social distancing. And it also helps with the fact of, you know, our kiddos with that sensory issue. I've got a couple actually, and they've done okay, you know, short amount of times with the mask, but if they're gonna have to keep it on for long term, they're gonna start chewing on that thing, and then it's null and void. So that's just kind of, want to throw that idea out there, you know, face shields with the social distancing, that still slows and can limit, but definitely slows that mode of transmission. So thanks, guys. You're all doing great.
This is Jackie. Johanna, yeah, I really appreciate that. I think there are going to be some challenges, like you said, with sensory issues for some, with health issues for others, you know, asthma, all those respiratory illnesses and diseases. We're going to be challenged on what we do. And I like the idea of face masks, or not face, I'm sorry, face shields. You know, I know they're not considered a quote unquote appropriate or adequate replacement for a mask, but you know, yeah, we've got to look at what we can do with, you know, with certain students and with certain staff too. You know, I think we have some staff with some respiratory issues as well, that we have to look at what we can do for them. So thanks for that.
All right, well, we're winding down. We're at the 2.5 hour mark, and we're getting there. So if without any other questions, if there is, let us know now. And if not, we can talk a little bit about the next stages. So any other questions before I move on? I'll talk about the next stage. All right.
What if there's like a mortality?
Oh, sorry.
I mean, like, is this school held, like, you know, like what happens? Like, if a kid goes to school asymptomatic, gets it, spreads it, and something really serious happens, like.
Yeah. So we talked about that regionally at the state level, Clarissa. So Bayfield County Health Department will come in and they'll assess and they'll make the recommendation along with our school board to shut the school down for a period of time, or to assess what we need to do for that situation if it gets to that point of seriousness. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean, the school's not going to be held liable, or, you know what I mean? I don't know, because these parents are going to send their kids into the school knowing that there is a chance that that could happen. Right? Or
Right,
no,
right.
or
Well, no, and that's why there's options that we're laying out tonight. If parents feel that it's, yeah, like you said, that this is unmanned territory here, so it's a big question mark.
Jeff, this is
Yeah.
Esme. Do we need to have a waiver? You know, in my job right now, I have to have people sign a COVID-19 waiver saying they acknowledge the risk when they enter a house. And so buyers entering a house, and then the seller also has to sign a waiver saying they acknowledge the risk of allowing a buyer to come in and look at their home. Totally different, but it is entering a property, entering something that's not your home, and in a confined space. So I am curious, Clarissa, if there is a liability there.
Yeah, the meetings that I attended, I'll look into that for the group here, and I'll report back on that one for COVID liability, any type of waiver form that we look at. I don't have any of that information now, but I'll look into that.
yeah, just even too, I mean, if the staff gets it, or you know what I mean? Like, who knows what anything can happen.
This is Jackie. Can I add a couple things that I think were missed in the wellness piece that I just thought of? We had discussed staffing and staff's comfort level. What if they are unable to be in the building, or if they have a high risk family member at home? I think someone had mentioned along the way that there was going to be an alteration in the handbook as far as employee sick time and how that would work. And then also that the incentive, the $100 incentive would go away as well, at least for this period. Thank you.
I want to just make one quick comment before we move on to, and that I heard a suggestion from teachers, which I thought made sense on a parent level too, that attendance be made weekly instead of daily. So a teacher might not have interaction with a family and student every single day if they're doing at-home learning, or just if they need to keep kids home because of illness or whatnot. And that, but at the same time, I think we want to ensure that somebody is making contact with a student and family at least once a week so that we know what's going on, and that it would be a lot easier for teachers if they only had to do weekly attendance and not daily attendance, and that might make more sense. And then beyond that, I am just curious if there is a truancy plan and what that looks like in these times.
This is Jackie again. Magdalene, I do know in regards to attendance that the county is going to be collecting data on absences, and I believe we're going to be required to report, to the best of our knowledge, what students are out with. If it is a COVID symptom, or if it is, something else, if it's an injury or something unrelated. But Holly did touch on that with us.
Okay.
All right, well, we'll conclude by talking about the next steps. And so the goal now is to continue this path we're on, and to continue to present what we're presenting to the school board. And when the board is comfortable with the approval process as a plan, an early plan, then we could take that to the community, and we can start working on the community perspective of a survey, determining how many families want virtual, how many families will come in person, those types of things. We can gather more information so we can plan accordingly. But I'm hoping tonight was a good step And Monday, we'll do this again. We'll add on some of the stuff that was discussed this evening. The instructional team, they meet on Monday. They have your insights for tonight, school board. They have the insights that were brought forward. And they're going to reconvene Monday morning. And we'll bring that to the board meeting Monday night. We do have to report to the state a plan by the end of the month. I think the plan that we have to report is similar to what you have in front of you. This is a process that other districts are using. This is a process that this is like the framework of our plan. And then the operation piece, how we distribute this plan and how it works, that's the next level. The board approved monies for that, for teacher development, for the committees. So we just need to keep moving this agenda forward. So the goal Monday night is, if it's not approved Monday, hopefully next week we'll have another special board meeting to get it approved. That way we can get it out to the parents as soon as possible in a way that is appropriate for them. If you notice, Washburn sent theirs out last week. I saw it on Facebook. They had their 3 levels. They had their options for parents. So that's out in Washburn. Now parents have something to look at in terms of the fall. So let's hope that we can do that soon for our families too, to get that out to them. Okay.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes.
I gave some feedback in a different email correspondence we were having about the ease that we have to give parents and the community, and knowing that we are doing our best to reduce all of the risk, and that we need the level of detail to know, the types of equipment we're sanitizing the school with, the types of chemicals and what that looks like. And for all of those spaces, the buses and the playgrounds and everywhere that children and staff are, and for our staff as well, putting them at ease. I think that's a big fear, is that people don't want to come back because they don't know what's happening. And all of that needs to be laid out.
I seen like a commercial on like that Stevens Point had put out about the opening of their school. It's pretty detailed, I think.
I agree, Nicole. This is Carla. Thanks for saying that, because the Wellness Committee has talked about that. And Jackie said she's looking into UV. She's looking into all these other, types of disinfectant or cleaning, the state of the art stuff is what we're doing. And you're right. We need to get that out there so everybody knows.
Well, no, those things take a lot of time to obtain. So we need to make decisions. What we're buying takes a long time to get. If we're going to be in the queue to get, we're using in our facilities out here this dry mist fogger machine. Those take a long time to get, 6-8 weeks.
Yes, and hopefully Monday, then I'll have Dave Weber provide an update on that, on the supply list that he's already ordered and things of that nature. We can talk about Monday.
I know we do have some items on order, and those mists are part of them, but yes, they are a long way out.
Yeah, hey Jeff, this is Terry. Just like they said, we have ordered numerous items, and right now we're just kind of in a waiting game as to finding out when it's going to come in. We've done thermometers, some of the spray, they're battery powered sprayers to use in bathrooms, on the walls, partitions, masks, all of that stuff right now. We've even tried ordering multiple sanitizing products, and right now we're just, like Nicole said, we're in a waiting game as to how soon we can get it and if we can get it in time.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. What we'll do, based on Nicole's question and others, we'll get more detailed on what type of supply, foggers, those types of things. We'll lay that out too, moving forward.
Yeah, and I just want to stress too that, you know, what families are going to look for is what's going to happen from the minute their kids step on that bus all the way through to the minute they get home, because that's what they're going to look for. What is the school doing? What steps are they using for caution and stuff like that? The plan's got to be a step-by-step plan. That's what I see. I don't know if anyone else sees it that way, but when my grandkids go back, I want to know when they get to school, what the school has planned for them.
Same, yeah. I mean, I've always had concerns just about even just right when they get on the bus. You know, like I'm leery just about that.
This,
But I also believe that we have enough intelligent people here that can do this and make it happen, because we have faith in all of you guys. So I just want to let you guys know all that.
Nicole, that concludes the presentation for this evening.
Are there any more questions or comments, board? Did we lose Glenn?
I think we did.
I haven't seen or heard Glenn in a while. But we can,
You're muted, Nicole. You're muted. Come back.
I'm trying. Okay, if that's everything, we need to, motion to go into executive.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Cindy to adjourn to executive session in accordance with Wisconsin statute 19.85, second by Debbie. Can we have a roll call, please, Linda?
Debbie Knopf,
Yes.
Nicole Boyd,
Yes.
Esme Martinson,
Yes.
Magdalene Dale,
Yes.
Cindy Garrity.
Yes.
Glenn
Motion carries- Oh, sorry. Motion carries, meet you in executive.